History likes to pretend it's serious. Dates, treaties, revolutions, manifestos, an endless parade of very important decisions by very important people. But tucked between the wars and coronations is a quieter tradition. People messing around and accidentally rewriting the day's agenda. This file isn't about noble causes or grand strategies. It's about the moments when someone said, "Wouldn't it be funny if?" And the universe replied, "Let's find out." A prank on paper is harmless, a joke with training wheels. But in practice, jokes don't respect fences. They roll downhill, pick up speed, and crash into things like economies, elections, and emergency response systems. The people in these stories thought they were pulling a stunt for a small audience, some classmates, a town, maybe a bored regiment. Instead, they triggered riots, panics, diplomatic scandals, and the occasional change in national policy. Across 45 historical cases, you'll watch practical jokes escape their cages. You'll see fake invasions that almost became real ones, radio dramas mistaken for breaking news, university pranks that mobilized entire police departments, and royal jests that ended with actual funerals. No one here set out to make history. They just underestimated how loudly history laughs. If you've ever thought, "Relax, it's just a joke," this file is your time capsule. Consider it a guided tour of the thin line between comedy and catastrophe, a line humanity has repeatedly crossed in clown shoes. Welcome to the Absurdist Files, the archive of pranks that didn't just go too far. They kept going until they needed lawyers, soldiers, or therapists. When just kidding wasn't enough. 1. The dummy invasion. In the early 1800s, a group of bored soldiers along a quiet border stuffed uniforms with straw and lined the scarecrow army on a ridge to spook the neighboring country. Fog rolled in, silhouettes sharpened, and a distant commander mistook the joke for mobilization. Within hours, cannons were loaded, couriers were riding, and both sides were drafting apologies for a war that almost started over a puppet show. 2. The Cathedral Miracle. A mischievous monk in a medieval town rigged colored glass and hidden candles to make a statue appear to weep blood during evening mass. It was meant to scare a fellow cleric. Instead, pilgrims flooded the city, merchants printed holy trinkets, and bishops launched an inquiry. By the time the trick was exposed, the town's economy depended on the fake miracle. They quietly reclassified it as a misinterpreted sign. 3. The exploding tobacco. In the 17th century, a court jester swapped a nobleman's pipe tobacco with a mixture that flared dramatically when lit. The prank was timed for a private laugh. Unfortunately, the nobleman was leaning over a map table at the time. The flare scorched diplomatic papers, burned a priceless rug, and singed the eyebrows of 2 ambassadors. The treaty survived. The jester's job security did not. 4. The university ghost. In the 19th century, students at an old European university rigged pulleys and bed sheets in a dormitory hallway to stage a haunting. Their classmates screamed, the dean fainted. The story hit local papers. Within days, spiritualists and curiosity seekers arrived, paying for tours. When the truth came out, the school had already installed donation boxes. The pranksters were punished, with the knowledge that they'd accidentally improved the endowment. 5. The fake royal edict. A bored clerk in a small kingdom forged a satirical decree saying all citizens must grow mustaches. to increase national dignity. He meant to show it to friends. A copy slipped into the real dispatch pile. Town criers read it aloud in marketplaces. Some citizens complied, others rioted. By the time the king rescinded the order, portraits and propaganda had already adopted the new facial hair aesthetic. Fashion remained where policy retreated. 6. The town that sold itself. In the early 1900s, a local newspaper joked that their sleepy village had been purchased by a foreign millionaire who planned to turn it into a luxury resort. The piece was filed under satire, small, unmarked, and poorly separated from real news. Investors arrived. So did speculators and con artists. Property prices spiked, then crashed, and the town spent years convincing the world it was not, in fact, for sale. 7. The Painted Cow Uprising. Farmhands once painted slogans on a herd of cows protesting low wages, then drove them through the main square at dawn. The sight of livestock demanding justice triggered laughter, and then a spontaneous workers' march. Local authorities, panicked by the sudden solidarity, cracked down hard. The original pranksters watched from a rooftop as their painted joke became the unofficial mascot of a labor movement. 8. The Daylight Savings Test. Before a country formally adopted daylight saving time, a group of pranksters decided to run a trial in their town by secretly changing public clocks forward an extra hour. Trains were missed, markets opened to no one, and a minor official issued an emergency statement blaming foreign sabotage. The government later introduced daylight saving properly. With ever. 9. The Radio Dragon. In the early days of wireless broadcasts, a small station aired a mock bulletin about a mythical creature emerging from the sea near a coastal village. Sound effects were improvised with sheet metal and wind. It was labeled as fiction, once at the start. Halfway through, fishermen abandoned their nets, churches rang bells, and a nearby militia prepared evacuation orders. The station manager retired early. 10. The library heist that wasn't. Students at an elite academy decided to steal every chair from the main library and arrange them in perfect rows on the lawn as a commentary on boring lectures. They struck overnight. Morning brought confusion, then panic. Administrators assumed a rival school had played the prank. Security was called, accusations flew, and an inter-school feud began. The original pranksters watched in horror as their satire nearly canceled an academic exchange program. When mischief outgrew its makers. 11. The newspaper obituary prank. A group of 19th century students secretly submitted a fake obituary for their still-living professor, intending to shock him with a dramatic resurrection. Instead, the paper ran it without verification. Mourners gathered, clergy prepared a sermon, and the professor walked into the chapel alive. The resulting panic made international news. The students received a punishment so severe it was never written down, just rumored in footnotes. 12. The Opera House Panic. In the 1800s, pranksters released pigeons inside a packed opera hall during a tense performance. Feathers flew, chandeliers shook. The audience screamed, "Fire!" Hundreds stampeded into the streets. The composer, unaware it was a prank, rewrote the scene for future shows to include real explosions. Attendance doubled. Chaos became a marketing strategy. 13. The Fake Treasure Map. A bored cartographer added a fictional gold mine to a mountain map as a private joke. Word spread. Miners stormed the region, set up camps, and began digging. Arguments, fistfights, and land disputes followed. despite geologists insisting the spot was barren. Years later, the government removed the map, after multiple lawsuits and zero gold. 14. The wedding that wasn't. In the Middle Ages, jesters convinced villagers that two feuding nobles were finally getting married. Townspeople prepared feasts, decorations, and a parade. When the nobles arrived separately, each believed the other was behind the announcement. Their mutual outrage restarted a feud that cost hundreds of lives. The jesters quietly relocated. 15. The accidental national anthem. A drunken poet wrote a satirical anthem mocking his country's rigid bureaucracy. Musicians performed it at a tavern as a joke. A traveling official misheard the lyrics and forwarded it to the capital as a patriotic composition. Within weeks, schools were forced to memorize it. The poet fled. His parody had become a requirement. 16. The disappearing general. During wartime training, soldiers hid their commanding officer's horse as a prank. He searched for hours, furious. Enemy scouts observed the confusion and assumed the army was leaderless. They attempted a surprise attack and failed horribly. The prank accidentally won a battle. The horse was promoted ceremonially. 17. The cursed statue hoax. Art students placed a mannequin dressed as an ancient figure near a well-known ruin, complete with fake inscriptions warning of doom. Tourists panicked. Locals performed rituals. The mayor formed an emergency council. Archaeologists debunked it in a day, but the legend persisted for decades. The mannequin now sits in a museum labeled Cultural Incident. 18. The accidental revolution. A printer added a satirical slogan, "No more kings," to a pamphlet about tax reform. Citizens misinterpreted it as a call to rebellion. Protests formed. The pamphlet's author begged people to calm down, insisting it was a typo. They didn't. Months later, the king fled. The printer was never charged. His work was now patriotic. 19. The university pirate broadcast. In the 1960s, engineering students hijacked a local TV signal to air a puppet show mocking campus policies. Unfortunately, the broadcast overlapped with a severe weather alert, and viewers assumed the puppets were the alert. Emergency shelters filled. National regulators intervened. The students, ironically, became pioneers in televised misinformation. 20. The fake scientific discovery. Two researchers, frustrated by funding rejections, forged a paper claiming they had discovered spontaneous photosynthesis in rocks. They expected a private laugh among colleagues. Instead, the paper went viral in newspapers hungry for sensational science. Weeks later, geological societies had to issue formal corrections. The prank cost the field dozens of grant distractions and earned the researchers lifelong sarcasm. When humor became a weapon. 21. The philosopher who faked a prophecy. A young scholar scribbled a joke prediction about a coming flood on a temple wall, mocking superstitions. Rainstorms hit that week. Locals panicked, evacuated livestock, and blamed the government. When he confessed it was a prank, they accused him of angering the gods. He spent months in hiding. His prophecy was later added to religious folklore, without mention of the joke. 22. The prank that dethroned a mayor. In the 1800s, rival students forged a letter from the mayor, announcing a mandatory 2-hour nap for all citizens. Shops closed, workers lounged in streets, and travelers accused the town of laziness. The humiliation led to an emergency vote, and the mayor was replaced, ironically by a man who approved of the nap idea. 23. The staged sea monster. Fishermen carved a wooden sea serpent, attached ropes, and pulled it through a bay at dusk to scare tourists. Newspapers printed it as fact. Scientists arrived. A naval ship investigated. By the time the hoax was revealed, souvenir shops had already stocked serpent-themed merchandise. The town still celebrates Monster Day. 24. The exploding typewriter. A secretary in a wartime office rigged her boss's typewriter with a harmless flash powder charge for April Fool's Day. The bang triggered a building-wide evacuation, military security lockdown, and a full intelligence review. The bomb was a teaspoon of chemistry, but the investigation lasted months. 25. The carnival election. Villagers jokingly nominated a local goat for mayor to protest corruption. The goat won, by a landslide. The pranksters laughed until government oversight forced new elections, citing biological incompatibility with office. The goat retired with honors. 26. The medieval moving statue. Entertainers rigged ropes to make a statue nod during a festival, meant as a harmless trick. Pilgrims declared it a sign. Crowds demanded miracles. When priests denied divine activity, a riot broke out. The performers fled before the statue did. 27. The accidental embargo. A clerk misread a satirical article about a foreign insult and filed it as a diplomatic memo. The cabinet believed the nation had been mocked publicly and imposed temporary trade restrictions. Weeks later, they discovered the insult was a joke about soup recipes. 28. The volcano prank. Miners placed burning barrels near the top of a dormant volcano to simulate smoke as a prank on a nearby town. People panicked, evacuations began, and regional leaders issued emergency protocols. The miners confessed only after they saw rescue units mobilizing. Their sentence included mandatory geology lessons. 29. The fake royal heir. Noble pranksters in the 1600s hired a child actor to pose as a lost prince, as a joke on a superstitious regent. The regent believed it, announced succession reforms, and prepared gifts. When the hoax broke, the regent's rage reshaped palace politics for a decade. The child, however, enjoyed a brief period of celebrity. 30. The radio prank that emptied a city square. A small station aired a comedic segment implying government inspectors were visiting restaurants that night. Owners panicked, closed early, and disinfected kitchens obsessively. The city center emptied like a ghost town. Health officials, confused, had to release public statements clarifying nothing was happening. Tourism dropped for weeks. When pranks rewrote history. 31. The prank that melted a museum. Art students replaced a museum's climate control instruction sheet with a fake version recommending extremely dry air for preservation. Staff complied. Over the next week, several paintings warped, sculptures cracked, and the museum quietly blamed structural aging. When the truth emerged, the students were banned for life and accidentally contributed to new international conservation protocols. 32. The staged UFO landing. In the 1950s, a group of teenagers built a glowing spaceship using scrap metal and lanterns, leaving it in a field as a joke. Local radio stations reported a possible extraterrestrial event. Farmers formed armed patrols. Military aircraft were scrambled. The teenagers confessed only after authorities prepared to evacuate 2 towns. Their craft sits today in a government archive labeled hoax, handled poorly. 33. The diplomatic wine swap. A servant swapped bottles at a royal dinner, replacing expensive French wine with a harsh homemade brew as a private joke. Foreign dignitaries assumed the switch was an insult. The misunderstanding led to a 6-month freeze in negotiations and a scandal that historians still footnote with disbelief. 34. The Ghost Army Mishap. A group of World War II soldiers built inflatable tanks and painted wooden cutouts of artillery to trick enemy spies. It worked. Too well. The enemy launched a massive barrage against the army, revealing their position in the process. Friendly forces intercepted the attack but suffered real casualties over a fake battlefield created as a joke between regiments. 35. The Textbook Rebellion. Students edited a school's history textbook manuscript, inserting absurd claims like, "The moon was once rented to Hungary for storage." The publisher printed it by accident. For years, teachers unknowingly taught the tampered edition. When historians corrected it, students from that era insisted the facts felt emotionally true. 36. The Fake National Holiday. A satirical columnist invented Potato Appreciation Day to mock useless government celebrations. Towns embraced it. Schools held events. Grocery stores made displays. When the government tried to cancel the fake holiday, the public protested. It remains officially celebrated in one region to this day. 37. The Prank Bomb Alert. A prankster mailed a hollow, mysterious device to a government office as a joke about bureaucracy. The building went into full lockdown. Bomb squads arrived, and nearby blocks were evacuated. The device contained only rubber ducks and confetti. Charges were not light. 38. The Explorer Who Moved a Border. Cartographers in the 1700s added a small, decorative island as a visual flourish on a maritime map. Captains assumed it was real. Naval ships charted routes around it for decades. When explorers discovered no island existed, nations argued over who lost it. 39. The Great Scientific Renaming. A graduate student, angry about grading policies, edited labels on specimens in a biology department, renaming several species with comedic Latin like Caninus regrettus. The labels were copied into research notes, then into early publications. Taxonomists spent years untangling the prank from legitimate nomenclature. 40. The prank telegram that nearly triggered a coup. A sarcastic telegram sent between military officers was intercepted and misinterpreted as a plan for rebellion. Loyalists mobilized, cities fortified, and 2 regiments nearly clashed before someone finally located the officers. At a bar, laughing. The military quietly banned humor in official communications. 41. The Fake Plague. Mischievous townsfolk in the 1600s used soot and paint to create plague marks on doors to scare neighbors. The panic spread faster than the prank. Trade halted, families fled, and the regional governor sent inspectors on. When the trick was uncovered, punishments were severe, but not as severe as the economic collapse caused by the joke. 42. The Accidental Archaeological Fraud. Students buried fake, ancient relics for new archaeology trainees to discover. The trainees documented the items carefully, and the prank spiraled until a respected historian validated the find. Entire theories were briefly constructed around the faked objects before the pranksters confessed. 43. The prank that rewired a city. Mischief makers redirected street signs in a European city one night for fun. The next morning, traffic collapsed, deliveries stalled, and emergency services couldn't reach destinations. In response, the city redesigned its signage system. The prank became urban policy. 44. The Staged Royal Duel. Courtiers forged letters challenging 2 nobles to a duel as a joke. Both men prepared seriously, each believing the other had issued the insult. When the truth emerged, neither backed down to avoid humiliation. The duel happened anyway, and the resulting scandal reshaped court etiquette for generations. 45. the hoax that inspired a real uprising. Satirists once printed a fake revolutionary manifesto calling for nonsensical demands, mandatory dancing, free cheese for all, and outlawing Mondays. Peasants embraced it as a genuine protest against oppression. A march formed. Soldiers panicked. Clashes erupted. The joke rebellion left real consequences, and the manifesto became a banned text for decades. History, written by accident. 45 pranks later, and the lesson is clear. Humanity has never been good at telling the difference between comedy and catastrophe. A joke is small, but people are large. A prank is brief, but consequences have long memories. History isn't shaped only by kings and generals. Sometimes it's shaped by bored students, clever tricksters, or poorly timed humor. And every once in a while, the world takes a joke seriously enough to rewrite itself. The Absurdist Files signature close. This has been the Absurdist Files. File 005. 45 historical pranks that went way too far. A documentary record of moments when laughter outran control. Because history doesn't repeat itself. It just misbehaves.